Welcome to the CivicSpark Poster Symposium series, which is celebrating the accomplishments of the 2021-22 CivicSpark Fellow Cohort. My name is Daniel Keim, and I am the Greater Sacramento / Sierra Regional Coordinator for CivicSpark, which is a national service program of CivicWell. I, along with Jesus, my partner in crime, we will be facilitating today's session for the first half of the Affordable Housing Network Group, which is very exciting. We've been working with these fellows all year. They've got some amazing projects to share with you all. A few logistical details for folks before we get started, just as a reminder. If you experience any technical difficulties during today's call, please message me directly using the chat feature. I can help you troubleshoot. And every fellow will have around 5 to 6 minutes to present their capstone posters and any supplementary slides. Their posters are going to summarize key accomplishments from their 11 months serving this year with AmeriCorps across California. And after each presentation, we're going to open it up to a couple questions from the audience. So feel free, folks, if you want to participate, the chat box is great for that. Or if you want to just give a quick kudos to a fellow or something like that, you definitely can at that time. We want to celebrate the fellows for sure. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. I guess we can go ahead and get started with our first presenter, who is Clare Blackwell, serving with the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG. And Clare is actually going to be followed by Angelica after that. So yeah, we'll kick things off with Clare. We'll hand it off to Clare now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Clare Blackwell, and I'm finishing up my second fellowship year with SCAG, or the Southern California Association of Governments, which is the largest metropolitan planning organization in the country, and it represents 6 counties across Southern California. The SCAG housing program was launched in 2020 as a response to the affordability crisis. While the demand for housing in California has increased, construction has significantly decreased in comparison over the last few decades, which is driving up rental and home prices throughout the region and the state. And as most of us know, the housing crisis has cumulative impacts on individuals' everyday lives and on the region's economy as a whole. So with regional early action planning, or REAP grant funding from AB 101, SCAG has been developing programs to support local governments with housing planning activities that accelerate housing production and advance the agency's long-range planning goals, which are outlined in Connect SoCal, as well as meet the region's goals for producing 1.3 million new housing units by 2029, as determined by RHNA, which is the state's need-based housing allocation system. So SCAG has framed REAP programming into 3 categories to coordinate these goals: partnerships and outreach, regional housing policy solutions, and sustainable community strategies, or SCS integration. And my fellowship was primarily focused on partnerships and outreach programs, which are designed to build long-term capacity to address the housing affordability crisis by encouraging intergovernmental collaboration on housing planning projects to make a broader regional impact on housing production. So between the Subregional Partnership Program and the Housing and Sustainable Development REAP programs, my co-fellows and I helped the SCAG housing team manage a wide range of housing affordability efforts, including ADU projects and housing finance, housing trust fund projects, all of which aim to expand housing supply at the local or regional level. And that involved tracking project progress in spreadsheets, managing quarterly reporting, and attending project management meetings to make sure that each project was on track to be completed by the REAP expenditure deadline. And in that process, it became clear that despite the unique housing challenges facing each jurisdiction, there is also significant overlap in housing planning efforts under REAP and the potential to maximize funding allocations by providing relevant resources and opportunities for peer learning between jurisdictions implementing similar projects. So during my fellowship, I helped carry out the peer-to-peer learning series, which is a series of quarterly meetings that held space for REAP project managers to collaborate and learn from one another about best practices for each of these types of housing planning efforts. So for example, 5 out of 15 subrecipients of the Subregional Partnership Program chose to implement ADU-related projects with their awarded funding. And those projects ranged in scope, but a lot of them involve some combination of tasks, such as developing a regional ADU capacity report, establishing an ADU permitting program with pre-approved floor plans to streamline development, creating a communications toolkit for homeowners with financing resources, and drafting templates for jurisdictions to use in adopting or updating their ADU ordinances. So after our first peer-to-peer meeting, 3 of the 5 decided to actually join together in developing one regional scale ADU project spanning 3 COGs, Orange County, Gateway Cities, and Ventura Council of Governments. And the project involves the development of public communication tools, housing-related model ordinances, and a program to promote affordable ADU rents. And one last REAP project that I wanted to highlight was one I helped develop toward the end of my service year for Housing Supportive Grant Application Technical Assistance. So with the leftover REAP funding, SCAG staff decided to help expand staffing capacity for interested jurisdictions in applying to housing-related grants. So I developed the program guidelines, the call for projects, and the application, as well as kind of a framework to consider in prioritizing jurisdictions in need of technical assistance. So supporting the development and management of so many REAP-funded programs from the start of my fellowship year to now has been a really wonderful learning experience for me, particularly as I've been a part of a huge range of housing planning efforts. It's also been really rewarding seeing the SCAG housing team grow to be what it is today, and I'm really grateful to have been a part of it. So thank you to all the CivicSpark and SCAG staff who have helped me along the way. Thank you.
Amazing. Yes, thank you, Claire. Congratulations as well on a second full year of service, a successful year for sure. So yeah, at this time, I'd love to open it up. If anybody has any questions for Claire, we've got a couple minutes for questions or just kudos as well. It's all good. I actually just thought of a question for you, Claire. So I'm just curious, what's the biggest difference, would you say, between your service in your first year and your second year, maybe in terms of like understanding of material and concepts, or just your experience overall, or however you want to interpret that?
Yeah, I would say there was a huge learning curve for me, especially because I really hadn't done much in the housing field before CivicSpark. So it was all really new to me. I had a sustainability background. And there's just an infinite amount to learn also. So it felt like I was really just getting into the hang of it in my second year, but also just having more responsibility on projects, since my first year, the housing program was really just getting off the ground. And then my second year, there was more kind of management and other projects that I could help play a bigger leadership role in. So yeah, my first year was really just learning. And I'm glad I did 2 years also for that reason.
Amazing. I see also a question in the chat from Mackenzie. and this might be related to what you just shared, but what was something challenging you overcame during the past service year? So I guess specific to this service year.
Yeah. I think something that I really worked on this past year was taking more initiative, which also has to do with just how the SCAG housing team was really new. And a lot of times there wasn't explicit instructions, and I kind of started taking on more projects by myself, and I had to kind of start them and keep them going, and check in with my supervisors as I went. But yeah, just learning how to take initiative and trust myself, because there wasn't always like a direct supervisor telling me exactly what to do.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again, Claire, and congrats again on a really amazing year of service. Awesome, yeah. So I guess we can transition now to our second fellow, who is going to be Angelica Gonzalez, also serving with SCAG. So yeah, Angelica, you may take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angelica Gonzalez, and I am one of the housing fellows placed with SCAG. As we are all aware, the Southern California region is facing a housing crisis that is not meeting the housing needs of the region's populations. And as a response to this crisis, SCAG has supported the development of housing types such as accessory dwelling units, also known as ADUs, across 197 jurisdictions. SCAG housing planners have been involved in research and implementation to streamline ADU development. One of SCAG's programs includes the Housing and Sustainable Development Program, also known as HSD. HSD involves SCAG planners, consultants, and 8 cities to produce deliverables such as needs assessment reports, ordinances, monitoring assessments, design plans, permit applications, and handbooks with the goal to streamline ADU production. My role as a fellow was to support ADU research projects and implementation programs. In addition to being involved in HSD implementation, I was also focusing on ADU research by updating a tool to track the ADU status across 197 jurisdictions within SCAG's 6 counties. I tracked growth trends to identify top jurisdictions thriving in ADU development. The benefits of this project included analyzing growth trends and sharing findings with regional planners to identify progress in local jurisdictions with the goal to support technical assistance efforts that will streamline ADU development. Next slide, please. Here we have ADU permits in the SCAG region from 2018 to 2021 across all 6 counties, with a total number of 31,209 permits. The goal is to transition these permits into completed units, which reveals the potential of 31,209 ADUs to receive certificates of occupancy or other forms of readiness. This is an important contribution to house individuals across Southern California. And as we approach the end of the year and technical assistance project deadlines that will produce ADU deliverables, the region should expect to witness an increase in ADU permits and completed units. Next slide, please. Here, as we can see, we have SCAG's top 10 jurisdictions with the highest ADU permitting numbers in the region. The jurisdictions from this list we highlighted with best practices include the city of Los Angeles and the city of Garden Grove. Some recommendations I have are the following, which are to encourage all jurisdictions to submit APRs to HCD by April 1st of every year to share recent and updated data with regional and local planners. Transitioning materials to SCAG's housing team to continue tracking permit and completed units as SCAG continues to provide technical assistance support to local jurisdictions, and develop an ADU affordability analysis to determine ADU's contributions to affordability and housing production. In terms of next steps, these findings were presented to the Regional Council to highlight successful jurisdictions and current SCAG ADU projects. This summarizes the housing efforts I supported as a fellow with SCAG. Next slide, please. I want to say thank you to CivicSpark and SCAG for the opportunity to serve as a housing fellow. I have always been interested in pursuing a career in affordable housing development to serve the vulnerable communities most impacted by the housing crisis. And this opportunity contributed to my knowledge and experience in the field and region where I am committed to pursue housing planning. I also want to say thank you to my co-fellows, Clare and Izzy, for their fellow support throughout the service term. Thank you all for your time. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you so much, Angelica. Congratulations on a successful year of service. And yeah, if anybody wants to chime in the chat or even unmute to ask any questions or share any comments, now's the time.
Can I ask, why does Los Angeles have so many more ADUs permits? Is it just because it's so much bigger than all the others, or is it a better spot to have ADUs?
I would say that some reasons for that would be, yes, in general, Los Angeles is a huge city compared to the rest of the cities across the region. Los Angeles also has a lot of resources when it comes to housing development, although of course the city is lacking resources, but there are more resources in the city. And that is why we also highlighted the city of LA in the story map that Izzy will present next, and actually explain some of the programs that they have there that support ADU development. But generally, yes, because it is a bigger city, I would assume that that's the major reason why these ADU permitting numbers are higher than the rest of the cities.
Awesome. Thank you for your question, Greg. And I see another one from the chat for you, Angelica. Can you share what strategies are being implemented or recommended to streamline the ADU permitting process?
Yeah, as I mentioned, some of the deliverables that SCAG is producing with consultants and the 8 cities involved with HSD are involve analyzing the local needs per jurisdiction. And one of the deliverables I can think of right now is the needs assessment report, which basically analyzes the needs that have not allowed ADUs to fully streamline through the development process. Therefore, gathering that information from homeowners who are those that are mostly involved in the permitting process and first-time members in the construction process as well are important steps in terms of streamlining the ADU permitting process.
Awesome. Thank you again, Angelica. Amazing presentation. And yeah, I am going to go ahead and guess that this will not be the last we hear of ADUs. It's quite a hot button topic within the field. So yeah, next we're going to shift over to Izzy Goldfarb, who's our third and final fellow presenting with SCAG. And then after Izzy is going to be Jose Armando Jauregui, serving with California Department of Housing and Community Development. So yeah, Izzy, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. And thank you to Angelica and Claire, my awesome co-fellows, for providing all of that awesome information on our work. I'm Izzy, a first-year CivicSpark fellow. I'm the third fellow at SCAG as a housing fellow. And as you heard from Angelica and Claire, SCAG is the largest metropolitan planning organization in the US and covers 6 counties and 197 jurisdictions. Today, I'm going to talk about the Esri story map that my co-fellows and I created for SCAG's housing webpage. First, what is an ADU? An ADU is an additional housing unit with complete living facilities on a lot with an existing or proposed primary dwelling unit. ADUs are allowed in both single and multifamily residence areas and in a variety of types. ADUs are really important, and it's because ADU development is playing a increasingly important role in addressing the need for housing in Southern California. Although they're really small structures, they are making large contributions to the regional housing needs allocation goal of 1.3 million homes in the SCAG region by 2029. And better yet, ADUs can provide affordable housing thanks to lower costs associated with ADU construction and new and innovative programs that are linking housing vouchers to ADUs. So first, let's hop down to the goals of the ADU story map square. SCAG's housing team wanted us to create a story map for stakeholders that would first exhibit the benefits of ADUs for renters, residents, communities, and cities through human-centered stories. The story map also had the goal of highlighting innovative ADU practices in the region to promote multiple avenues of support for ADU development at the local level. Third, we wanted the story map to illustrate the ADU permitting progress across the region over the past few years. And lastly, we wanted to promote SCAG's current work regarding ADUs. Clare mentioned the COG ADU project. There's also helping 8 cities across the region with providing planning assistance, developing ADU public engagement resources, pre-approved ADU plans, new or updated ADU permit applications, financing tools, things like that to support the acceleration of ADU development. The blue boxes in the middle of my slide share the steps that we took to execute the vision of the story map. So we researched ADU best practices across the whole state and then located those best practices within the SCAG region. We selected some of those best practices we found, and we interviewed city staff that were supporting those programs to learn more about how they did what they did and why they did it. We found human interest stories that illustrate the benefits of ADUs. We created an interactive ADU permit map to display the trend at the city level across 4 years. And we also created maps that distinguish jurisdictions within the region that SCAG is working with to provide technical assistance. Next slide, please. So here's a glimpse at the mapping of ADU permits. We wanted to show the upward trend of ADU permitting through the region. So a darker red signifies a higher number of ADU permits. And we normalized the ADU permit data with California Department of Finance's E5 that had total numbers of housing units, so that Los Angeles sticks out less just because it's large and has a lot of people living in it. And as you can see, just from these few years, there's a lot of progress. And in that interactive story map, you can search your jurisdiction and see what those numbers look like. Next slide, please. So here I want to share a deeper dive into the innovative practices section of the story map. It's probably the largest section. And so, as I said, after researching the best practices across the whole region, we narrowed down to 4, and we had great conversations with the staff. And so we hope that sharing these insights will inspire other cities to follow suit on some of these innovative practices. So first up here, I just have a screenshot, 2 minutes left, thank you, of Pasadena for the city's second unit ADU pilot program, which creates opportunities for financially assisted ADU rentals. The program incentivizes homeowners to develop ADUs by providing comprehensive project management assistance with financing, designing, permitting, and construction. And in exchange for the city's support, homeowners rent their unit to a Pasadena rental assistant tenant for 7 years. So the program connects the new ADU to the city's own rental assistance program to ensure affordability of the new unit in an enforceable way. We also featured the city of Garden Grove for the city's really thorough and accessible ADU communication. They take a really multifaceted approach to ensure that residents are well informed of ADU laws and development processes. And the city staff has even been on Vietnamese TV to get the word out about ADU law changes. Third, we highlight Los Angeles for the city's LA ADU Accelerator program, which connects older adults who are housing insecure to ADU homeowners who are first-time landlords. So they get connected. And then lastly, we feature the Los Angeles Standard Plan program that offers interested homeowners a simplified path through the ADU development process. And all in all, it was a really wonderful experience to be a part of this project because I got to learn new skills like ArcGIS. I got to collaborate closely with my co-fellows, and we got to deliver a final product that will be available for the public for years to come. And just in general, very grateful for the opportunity to work at SCAG and collaborate with CivicSpark fellows. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Izzy, and congratulations on a successful year of service. Yeah, we can go ahead and open it up to questions and comments for Izzy now. Oh, I see, Jack, you've got your hand up. You have a question, Jack?
Yeah, well, I was curious, like, what kind of outreach you did with the story maps, like who you talked to and how you decided to interview them, I guess.
For sure. So we spoke with, we got in contact with city planning staff that were involved in creating these innovative programs. And so we spoke with teams from each of those 4 cities that I mentioned. And originally we wanted to speak with, to source good stories about the benefits of ADUs, we wanted to speak with homeowners that had ADUs or tenants of ADUs, but we found that that was a big challenge for us. So we resorted to sourcing good stories from articles and different videos online.
Awesome. Thanks for your question, Jack. Yeah, and then Angela, it looks like, has a question. Do you mind dropping the link to the ADU story map in the chat? You get a second.
Absolutely love to. I'm working with IT right now to publish it, and I will definitely send it out to you all once it is available for the public.
Amazing. Well, awesome. Is it? Yeah, we have a little bit of time if someone wants to ask one more question, maybe. Oh, looks like we've got one. How is SCAG promoting the story map and sharing these as examples to other jurisdictions?
So we actually all presented at the last regional council meeting, and we walked through a lot of these innovative practices, and everyone was really receptive of our presentation. We also have a distribution plan set in place for us to make sure that we get a lot of eyes on this and to make sure that it has an impact.
Awesome. Well, yeah, Izzy, thanks so much for your presentation today. Great job, and congrats again on a great year of service. And yeah, we can go ahead and move things right along to our next presenter, who is Jose Armando Jauregui, who is serving with California Department of Housing and Community Development and Gateway Cities Council of Governments. And then after Jose actually will be Jackie Taylor, who's serving with County of Calaveras Planning Department. Yeah, Jose, go ahead and take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jose Armando Jauregui, and I'm the CivicSpark Fellow serving the Gateway Cities Council of Government in partnership with the State Department of Housing and Community Development. The Gateway Cities Council of Government is a governing association that consists of 27 jurisdictions and unincorporated cities in the Southeast LA County. This area is home to over 2 million residents and has been assigned to plan for over 76,000 new homes over the next 8 years. Although I'm not from LA, this area reminds me of home. I grew up in a single-bedroom mobile home in the city of Palm Springs with my family of 6 in the city of Palm Springs, California. In the community I grew up in, we were just under-resourced, disinvested, and provided minimal opportunities for community development. These characteristics that I use to describe my community that I grew up in are similarities I see in the Gateway region. Using my personal experiences and resources provided me during my fellowship, I aspire to become a resource to those who have been under-resourced. This presentation will include the projects I was involved in at the COG and at HCD. Then I will discuss how the outcomes resonate with the goals I set at the start of my fellowship. In order to plan for the new homes assigned to the Gateway Cities by the state, a jurisdiction and county are required to have a compliant housing element by state law. A housing element is a document that includes housing-related goals, policies, and programs that address the future and projected housing needs of a community for all income levels. At the COG, I facilitated planning efforts through my involvement in the following projects: the Housing Trust Fund, which will serve as a new source of funding for developments for affordable projects; an inclusionary housing ordinance study. This study will lead to a policy that will require a minimum percentage of units to be allocated for affordable units in projects. Also, an accessory dwelling unit calculator. This tool will provide homeowners with rough estimates on the creation of an ADU on their property or a conversion of a garage or a guest home into an accessory dwelling unit. As mentioned by my other fellows earlier, an ADU is an affordable option that could serve to lower income household residents and to a variety of special needs housing as well. Also, another project that I worked on was the parametric modeling tool. This will help maximize the development in cities by providing them with the best case scenarios to redevelop on current areas. Also, an inclusive engagement study. This toolkit will provide elected officials and city staff with new strategies on how to work with residents on outreach efforts in relation to housing policy. And lastly, an innovative housing finance study. Results from this study will provide cities with data on commercial areas that can be redeveloped into rezoned into housing development. In order to further support the Gateway region's local efforts to implement programs and policies that would provide new opportunities to its residents, I joined the Regional Early Action Planning Grant and the Pro-Housing Destination teams at HCD. REAP 2.0 is a $600 million investment, state and federal investment, to advance the implementation of adopted regional plans by funding, planning, and implementation activities that accelerate infill development while reducing per capita vehicle miles traveled. The Pro-Housing Designation Program rewards cities and counties that have implemented or have committed to policies and programs that go above and beyond state housing law requirements by providing them with incentives in the form of additional points or other preference scorings and infrastructure programs and housing community programs and also community development programs. As a team member, I provided technical assistance, reviewed applications, and facilitated presentations on program guidelines that would help cities and communities understand the importance of these new opportunities to their locations. As depicted on the picture of the Gateway Cities Council Pro-Housing Workshop, that was me and my team member Chelsea Lee, Sohab, and Jenny Sutter, not included in the picture, but this was an opportunity where I was able to go visit the Coachella Valley and conduct in-person technical assistance on the Pro-Housing Workshop. But this wasn't the only opportunity presented to me to work with other regions, as I worked with the Heights region and the Riverside County. On a Pro-Housing Workshop, also worked with Tulare County, Roseville, and also facilitated another in-person workshop for the Coachella Valley. And looking at the outcomes of my fellowship, I measured the projects I was involved in not by the quantitative data, but focused on the bigger picture of the impact these projects will have in the years to come. I realized that in order to be a resource to the Gateway cities as a fellow, I needed to build a strong foundation through smaller goals. The small goals I set for myself at the start of my fellowship was to provide the Gateway region with new programs and activities that they could adopt into their own housing element. At the moment, we currently have 3 cities that have a compliant housing element, but overall, every city has made substantial progress in submitting housing elements that include transformative plans that are supported by programs and policies that affirmatively further for housing, place-based strategies at targeting disadvantaged communities, and incentivizing programs for affordable housing development. This wouldn't be possible without the efforts of the Gateway cities and NCD to collaborate with each other to foster a new partnership that has created a stronger bond and representation of the region and the state's efforts to address the current housing crisis. As my fellowship comes to an end, I'm very thankful for the opportunity presented to me by CivicSpark, my supervisors, who are now my mentors, and my colleagues. I've had the pleasure of working alongside a few fellows this year and some other projects with the state and other fellows through activities hosted by CivicSpark. I just want to congratulate all my colleagues on the hard work and contributions you have all made into your communities you work with. This fellowship has provided me with professional experience and growth as an individual. Before joining CivicSpark, I had ambitions of changing the way the cities plan for communities, specifically communities of people of low income and people of color, not just in LA, but throughout the state of California. Because the reality is that disadvantaged communities are the ones affected the most during this housing crisis and the COVID pandemic. I had no clue how I was going to make the impact, but I believed in myself. Thankfully, I wasn't the only one believing in myself as well. As I reflect back on my fellowship, I've come to measure the impact that I had in this field of work, not by the number of projects I worked on, but the number of lives that will be impacted through the projects I was a part of. These projects will provide families with new affordable housing options that won't be cost-burdened or overcrowded. programs that support community development, and invest into the people who have been disinvested. It's been a great pleasure of mine to serve the COG and HCD as a fellow, and it's a bigger honor to continue my current progress onwards from a fellow role to now as a housing policy analyst at the State Department of Housing Community Development. Thank you all for taking time of your afternoon to listening to my presentation and my colleague's presentation. And this concludes my presentation.
Amazing. Congratulations, Jose, and thank you for another successful year of service. Yeah, love to open it up to everyone again. If you have any questions for Jose or comments for Jose. I see a hand up from, yeah, Colin. Good to see you, Colin.
Hey, Daniel. I'm Colin. I'm coming from HCD. I'm one of Jose's supervisors on this project. And I just want to say that we have been blown away by his efforts this year. He's really contributed to so many different innovative projects and really dedicated himself and you know, took advantage of every learning opportunity. And I think we're really grateful for his contributions there. I don't know, I could go on and on, but we're thrilled to have him, you know, continue on with us next year. Jose, I do want to give you a couple softball questions. Can you talk about what was, because I know you contributed to like a lot of different projects, and you touched at the end about how impactful you think they were. So could you give us like, what was your favorite project to work on within your scope? And then what was the one that, you know, is there one that you think is like stands out as the most impactful for you?
One of the ones that I've been working mostly that I was able to facilitate was the accessory dwelling unit calculator. As mentioned earlier, ADUs are a very popular new source of affordable housing options that a lot of cities are implementing into their housing element. And so in order to allocate these units to affordable units, there should be strong programs and policies that should be set in place by the city. And so being able to help the cities with these new current efforts that they have with the ADU calculator was definitely something that I was really proudful of. It was a little bit of, I'd say, one of the challenges I faced with that was the participation of some of the jurisdictions, with a lot of them being limited capacity with their staff. So I had to take more of initiative in conducting more outreach and working with residents, and not with the residents, but with the city to get this information to provide onto the ADU calculator. And one thing that I'm really looking forward to is the parametric modeling. This new tool will actually help jurisdictions with their site analysis and also with their realistic capacity assumptions, meaning that this tool will be able to provide them with real life information that they could implement and use to support their analysis on areas where they're currently wanting to rezone to maximize development.
Awesome. And it looks like there are a couple of questions in the chat, but we unfortunately only have time for one more. So I'm gonna pick the one that came in first from Tim, which is, what skills were you most proud of enhancing through this project, Jose?
My knowledge, as I mentioned earlier, I knew that I had a lot of real personal experiences that I wanted to address through the housing work. And so I was never really too educated on how to address these issues and how to look at them from a government and from a regional or state government perspective. And so I had some advocacy work background that I was able to use to my advantage in kind of working with outreach and working with the residents. And so one of the skill sets that I really wanted to acquire was being able to understand how the government works from a local and state perspective, and providing technical assistance to jurisdictions during their housing element progression submissions. And I know we said one more mission, but just to address Kaylee's question, I would say that working with the LA region has been meaningful work. I've had the opportunity to work with the region back home where I grew up in. So being able to make an impact in the areas that I grew up in and that I've been familiar with has been really meaningful work. And I'm looking forward to continuing this work from the state perspective.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing, Jose. And yeah, congrats again on your year of service, and yeah, everything coming up for you next as well. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and switch things up, moving along to our Calaveras fellows, the first of which is Jackie Taylor. Jackie, if you want to take things away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Taylor, and I served in Calaveras County Housing during the program's expansion. I know you've heard a lot about ADUs, but rural living is a bit different. So it's a lot harder to fit all these city type laws into this area. So my main project was to represent Calaveras in a regional accessory dwelling units ADU project. These are also known as backyard homes or in-law units. The pictures here show the different types of ADUs and home sharing, which is a non-construction way to provide living space as well. ADUs can be used in many ways, such as affordable housing, but also to allow families to grow or to age in place, which is really important here because there's a lot of people over the age of 65 out here. This project was in collaboration with Mariposa, Amador, and Nevada counties. Our goal is to develop an interactive ADU workbook with financial calculators and other materials. And provide outreach for these counties to encourage homeowners to develop ADUs in our communities. Moving down to the project deliverables, this is just a part of what I worked on. So the first thing is ADU program strategies, which I'll go into more detail on the next slide. A workbook consultant, which I looked for the best consultant for our project, and our project partners chose to move forward with them, which was really cool. An ADU law summary. I reviewed new ADU laws and simplified them into a Q&A format that really helps break down laws for public use, as well as an ADU frequently asked questions. I also compiled a guide on ways homeowners can fund an ADU and a list of potential ADU vendors, as well as an ADU glossary of terms. These kinds of materials better inform homeowners to make better decisions about starting a new ADU project. I recommend making these easily accessible, such as on a website or at the planning or building department counters. On to the other housing outcomes. These are some highlights for Calaveras housing. I worked on the housing element annual progress report. I used housing data to make easy to read charts, and I developed slides that explain the importance of the report, which was then presented to the County Board of Supervisors, which this sparked a crucial discussion about affordable housing here. And it brought attention to the potential uses of the data provided by the housing element report. The second item was a home accessibility modifications grant program. This helps with building new housing. It's important to maintain housing that fits the needs of our residents. Like I said, there are a lot of elderly. I developed an introductory programs, materials, and forms to support the program, which will be used using the funding called the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Funds. This kind of program helps people of all ages to live independently in their homes as well. And finally, I assisted creating materials for and hosting the Housing Resource Partnership. These meetings provided a place for Calaveras community housing leaders from development and service groups in the public, private, and faith-based sectors to work together in moving the community's housing goals forward. And it's brand new and it was super cool. On the next slide, I'll go over the ADU program strategies in more detail. So these are the ADU program strategies that any counties and cities can employ. The first one is technical assistance. It's a one-on-one person that someone can call. It's a crucial step in supporting homeowners. It's a human element that provides answers to their questions, and it can move someone's project idea toward the construction phase. Number two is an interactive ADU workbook, like the one we're working on, that assists homeowners of all skill levels with getting through the development process step by step. And it includes creative activities that also engages its users. Creating or adding a website to provide up-to-date ADU information is another great way to inform homeowners. ADU partnerships, such as with like lenders or realtors with ADU experience, could provide new ways to fund an ADU project. Providing an ADU fees chart with fees from all departments involved in the development process that gives homeowners transparency to make project decisions, and listing local financial options or providing a project calculator. And then providing financial incentives like reduced fees. And an ADU specific application helps with the streamlining process. And last, permit ready or pre-approved plans, which works best when plans are directly available through architects and designers who've created approved plans. This allows homeowners to contact the firms themselves to gain access to the designs, which ensures a free market with more options and customization that really gets people interested in the projects. And it was a pleasure working with Calaveras County Housing Team and providing the support that they needed to bring in these new housing programs. And that's it. Any questions?
Awesome. Thank you, Jackie. Congrats on a successful service here with Calaveras. And yeah, if anyone wants to throw some questions in the chat or even wants to unmute to ask a question. I see, Angelica, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I have a question regarding the deliverable that you shared, transitioning the ADU legal material, ADU laws into a Q&A. And I was wondering what were the major laws that you highlighted in that Q&A, specifically for your county?
I mostly summarized state law and then went over the ordinance here for Calaveras and broke that down. So those are the main legal documents that I worked with. I also worked on a little bit of explaining SB 9, but that's going to be maybe on our website as a separate thing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. We have time for maybe one more question. I actually have a question. This is an easy one, or should be an easy one to answer, Jackie. How critical was your work with the county in this area?
Like immeasurable. The housing program didn't exist 3 years ago. Helping my supervisor Lee has just been really great. And I know she couldn't do anything without us. Like we've been just trying to support her as much as we can, doing whatever she needs to help build capacity as she's trying to get through building more programs for the county.
Yes, for sure. I only asked that because yes, I've heard from Jackie and Romi's supervisor many times. This work literally wouldn't exist without them. They've been such an invaluable resource to us. So yes, massive kudos to you, Jackie, and then also to our next presenter as a segue to Romi Holmes, who's going to be presenting as well with County of Calaveras. Romi, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, my name is Romi and I served Calaveras County Housing along with Jackie. She kind of already explained it a little bit, so I'll just do it really quickly. The housing program is a part of both the County Planning Department and County Health and Human Services Department. The program works on increasing the development of affordable housing and housing stability services. My main role was to implement outreach, so I'll focus mostly on that aspect of my service. Calaveras County Housing is a new program in the county and was about 2 to 3 years old when I started, and it also had like a small staff. Our services were not well known at the time, even by other programs within our department. So I worked on creating tools and methods to engage with our clients, county departments, and other stakeholders. During the later half of my service, I began working with a consultant to launch our own website and advertisements for the program. Sadly, recently we had to stop creating our own website for housing, but we will get to work on a housing section of the county's website as well as launching an advertisement campaign. So here are some outreach deliverables I'll be leaving Calaveras County Housing with. At the beginning of my service, I made a housing presentation that my supervisor has used to teach other county departments and programs about our services and to train them on the referral process. I've also created a strategic outreach plan to help us work with our outreach consultants. I created website content that will be used on the county website and other outreach mediums. And then we are planning on creating Google and Facebook advertisement campaigns to help bring traction to our services on the county website. And then I also represented housing at a county event called the On the Right Track event, and it was for high school juniors and seniors, and I'll talk about this more in another slide. I made informational and educational content for outreach, such as posters, presentations, and website content. Pictured on the top right is an example of educational content I made for the On the Right Track event I just mentioned. And then our program has been hosting a housing resource partnership. This partnership is to bring those in the county that worked on or are affected by housing together to create a plan for housing in the county. Our first meeting was like maybe 3 weeks ago. The logo pictured in the middle I made to represent our housing resource partnership, and I'm going to talk about this more on another slide. And then this is a little bit outside of outreach. Jackie mentioned it earlier. So we were asked to make programs with our permanent local housing allocation funds, and I worked on a down payment assistance grants program. I also created the packet designs for both of our programs and the Board of Supervisor presentation to have them review, which will be on the Board of Supervisor agenda soon. And then for next steps, website content that I've created will need to be input into the county website. And then once our advertisement campaign is launched, we'll need to track the advertisement metrics, and then a tenant education videos will need to be made for clients. And then our program will need to continue working with the housing resource partnership to create a strategic housing plan. And then next slide. So here are photos of the Housing Resource Partnership logo, the charter cover, and a slide from our kickoff presentation. The slide from the presentation shows who is a part of the partnership. We invited government agencies, private and public industries, community organizations, faith-based organizations, and community members. So basically, community leaders who had some role in or are affected by housing. Jacqueline and I worked on the kickoff presentation, edited the charter, sent invitations, and called organizations to get them to join. We prepared for the kickoff meeting and a consensus building training. And then we also facilitated conversations had at the kickoff meeting. And we are currently preparing for meetings where a strategic housing plan will be created to increase affordable housing development and housing services. Next slide. Here's more of the educational content I made for the On the Right Track event. This event was to teach high school juniors and seniors about life after high school so they could be prepared. We went to 2 different local high schools along with other local organizations and businesses. At our table, students were able to use these QR codes to get information on how to find a rental, how to understand a lease, their rights as renters, and how to budget for a rental. And this event is going to be annual, so these materials can be used again. Next slide. Thank you. That's it. Any questions?
Awesome. Thank you, Romi, for sharing, and congrats on an amazing year of service. And yeah, if anyone has any questions for Romi, go ahead and throw them in the chat, or you can raise your hand or unmute.
I have a quick question. What made you think, or whose idea was it to go speak at high schools? I mean, I can see how would be a really valuable skill for people fresh out of high school, you know, perhaps
Um,
leaving their parents' house. Really cool community engagement aspect.
so it was actually put on by the Chamber of Commerce, and it was like their second time doing it. And a partner that we work with suggested that we be there.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Jack. And Romi, I see a question from the chat as well from Mackenzie. What did you learn about your interests or skill sets this year that you weren't aware of before you started your service term?
Well, so actually the making the down payment assistance program really showed me like how good I am at research and like program development. So that's something that I'm really interested in doing at another job in the future.
Amazing. And yeah, we actually might have a question, time for one more question. Oh my gosh, words are hard. Time for one more question. I see one from Tim that just came in. What would you want people to know about doing this work in rural communities? Yeah, good question there.
It's a good question. I think rural communities have like their own challenges when it comes to housing. A lot of people don't really want like apartments or like multi-family housing. So you need to like think of more creative ways, like maybe having ADUs or maybe thinking about lot splits.
Amazing. Thanks for the questions, everyone. And thank you, Romi, for the presentation, and congrats again on this year. Yeah, so we're going to move things right along with Jack Barnes serving with the city of Elk Grove. And then after Jack, we're going to actually conclude today's session with Greg Kamph serving with the city of Alameda.
All righty, thank you, Daniel. So good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. And again, yeah, my name is Jack Barnes and serving at the city of Elk Grove, which is the second largest city in Sacramento County and a higher income part of Sacramento County more generally. There's a 75% owner occupancy here versus 57% countywide, and the average household income is 45% higher than the countywide average. So while this region, Sacramento region more generally, saw a 20% increase in rent in 2021, this does make things particularly harder for members of the Elk Grove community or people, low-income people trying to move in and become part of the Elk Grove community to find housing that they can get into, much less afford on a continual basis. So the main thing I've been working on this year is the landlord incentive program, which I'll read straight from the guidelines, aims to increase the number of housing units in Elk Grove available to households either experiencing homelessness or participating in the federal housing choice voucher program, formerly called Section 8, which advances the goals of the city by providing housing opportunities for all economic segments. So you can see in that bottom left-hand box there, the main incentives that we offer. Landlords are $3,000 bonus for their first time participating, in addition to $1,500 for their first unit, and then another $1,500 if they were to, rent more units under our program, as well as a double security deposit. And the no loss bonus there will pay a prorated rent for the time it takes to move a qualified household in. So coming into this, I did research other landlord incentive programs, city, counties, other PHAs in California, even a couple in other states in the country. And this is sort of the certain incentives we landed on and felt were best for Elk Grove and just for what worked for the city on the administrative side. We considered a property damage offer, but we decided the double security deposit would be the best administrative way to cover that, for example. So a lot of the work I've done, has been drafting text to the webpage, flyer, creating forms and checklists, but more, I would say, would be on the outreach side and the technical assistance for processing claims, and then directing housing seekers. I've been really had the opportunity to work on both the housing seeker side and landlords, housing provider side, and trying to connect those two parties to get participation in our program and to, as we say, increase opportunities for other economic segments of the community. And so for that implementation, I've collected rental data weekly from not only Elk Grove, but like the bottom half of Sacramento, all under 50 pretty much, if you're familiar with the county. And then, as I said, a lot of emailing and cold calling owners of current rentals and property management companies, and housing seekers that I've been connected to through our nonprofit partners who I work pretty closely with, or who hear about it by word of mouth or by our website, and helping them see if they qualify, and if they do, what their next steps are, as well as a lot of coordination with the Public Housing Agency, Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency, which is countywide, and they administer the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which we're trying to, increase participation in Elk Grove. Another stat is, there's 11% of the county's population is in Elk Grove, but we only have 6% of voucher holders. So we really want to be increasing that and representing more there. So I've had the opportunity to work with our public affairs team at Elk Grove, finance team, code enforcement, and a lot of nonprofit partners. I've spoken to real estate agents to try and get the word out. This graph in the upper right-hand corner isn't the most important sort of data that I've worked with, but it does, I think, give a good idea of the kind of providers that I would work with, and apartments and property managers screen tenants differently than private owners do a lot of the time. So we can check out the next slide quickly. That's just these sections down here, examples of this is from the website, so different things people can learn about, both landlords and housing seekers. And then the following slide is just we post each week my polls to help seekers identify housing, and then we can highlight when landlords have expressed to me their interest in the program. So I've learned a ton this year about the rental market and the screening process and the barriers that low-income households face in finding housing, and governments face and trying to foster equitable communities, as well as the state of homelessness in the region, and how nonprofits and governments work together. So I would thank CivicSpark for the opportunity, thank my site supervisor, Sarah Bontrager, for her attention and flexibility. And I'm looking forward to serving a second year at the City of Elk Grove.
Awesome. Thank you, Jack, and congrats on successful year of service.
Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, if y'all have questions for Jack, you can throw them in the chat. It looks like Jackie has a question. Go ahead, Jackie.
Yeah, hey Jack. I know we talked a little bit many months ago, and so I was just wondering how many more people got interested in your program.
As a matter of fact, the last week or two has gotten a lot of recent interest. We've had, I think, 6 landlords officially participate, and there's 7 more in the pipeline right now, which waiting on checking various boxes and hearing back from the PHA. But it's really starting to pick up steam quite recently, as a matter of fact.
Great.
Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, Jack, I actually have a question. I'm curious because I'm excited for you that you're doing a second year with your site. What are you most excited for, to dive into deeper or explore more thoroughly, maybe different areas or something like that?
Well, one thing that I got started on a little bit a while ago is collecting rental requirements from different apartments and property management companies. And different of those post more different on their website. Some of you really can't find anything. Some are very clearly stated on their websites, but knowing exactly the rental requirements, if they have exact credit scores, that baseline credit scores that they require, just compiling all that, and theoretically having some sort of system where people can just input their income and cross-reference it with the rental pulls each week, and it would just identify which ones are feasible, which would be much more accurate if I had all that rental requirement information in there as well. Or just publishing it as a guide would, I think, be really helpful. So I'm definitely intend to look more into that.
Amazing. Yes. Well, awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much, Jack. Congrats on this year. And yeah, just having such a successful year with Elk Grove. Yeah. So we only have one presenter left, and that is going to be Greg Kamph with the city of Alameda. So yeah, Greg, you can go ahead and close us out, help us finish strong.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Kamph. I work with the city of Alameda, and I was placed with the community development department, and I worked for the rent control program. So what the rent control program had me do was help them with their capital improvement plan. So the rent control program does two things. It, of course, covers rent control, which is controlling how much prices rise for renters each year. Also, they are in charge of formulating policies that govern capital improvements. Now, my role was to assist them with creating a new policy for these capital improvements. So the city has been creating capital improvement policies since 2016. And after 5 years, they want me to go and look at the city's laws and to go around the Bay Area and look at different cities around and see what their laws and how ours compare. Now, this has been prompted because the city council has looked over our city's capital improvement plan, and so far they have found some issues that have been brought forth. One of those issues was that in the last 5 years, only 8 landlords have applied for a capital improvement pass-through, and only 1 has been approved. So they want me to help them formulate a new policy, and my job will be to bring all of the relevant policies that other cities have, bring it together, and so that it can be presented to the city council so they can next determine how to proceed. So a few definitions I think are useful when talking about capital improvement policies. You're going to hear annual general adjustment, and this is the amount of change in the CPI that cities will then use to determine how much rent can increase a year. Another is pass-throughs. This is how much cost landlords can move to tenants for their capital improvements. And a capital improvement is a long-term improvement to a building or amenities. Now, I first studied Alameda, and it determines that you can only do a capital improvement so long as it is 8 times the monthly rent times the number of units in a building. And that equals the minimum cost of a capital improvement allowed. Now, I noticed that this is very different, and almost no other city prices their capital improvements that way. They generally just do a list of what is allowed. And Alameda also caps the general adjustment per year at 5% maximum. And with that you can do an additional 5% with capital improvements, making that a 10% potential change in rents per year. So I noticed also that mainly larger cities from San Francisco and LA tend to have older capital improvement and rent control laws, and they don't focus on their capital improvements so much as rent control, while newer programs from smaller cities are generally focusing more on capital improvements and trying to increase regulation on what is allowed and what is not allowed. So I've identified that the problems with Alameda's capital improvements is that they are perhaps too large and that only very large landlords are able to go through with them. And instead they should focus on smaller capital improvements like floors, like appliances, like lighting, like heating, that sort of thing, so that it's more accessible for smaller landlords to make these improvements. And after researching cities like Culver City, Oakland, San Francisco, Richmond, East Palo Alto, Hayward, Los Gatos, Mountain View, San Mateo, and Santa Monica, I believe that I've gotten an appropriate overview of how cities put limits on their capital improvements. They have protections so that if you have a capital improvement and like, let's say to a floor and then put a new floor on it, you can't get a second raise on top of it. The old one's cost goes away while the new one is now the one they pay for. And also there are limits so that if you have to pay off the capital improvement in 15 years, that might raise the amount a renter costs over a certain percentage, let's say 10%. That payback period is now extended so that renters are protected. And I have taken all of this information and put it together in a single spreadsheet so that it can be presented to City Council so that they can then take these recommendations and make changes to our capital improvement laws that both encourage its use while also protecting tenants from unreasonable rent increases. And you can go to the next slide. And that is my presentation. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you, Greg. Congrats on this year of service. And yeah, if anybody has any questions for Greg. Looks like Jackie, you've got your hand raised. Go ahead, Jackie.
I'm just curious where the funding for the capital improvements come from.
Sure. So these are things that landlords, they take it from rent and, they increase rent to pay for it. And so it's not something necessarily that the city gives them, it's that we're trying to regulate how much they can raise rents for tenants and how long they expect those improvements so the tenants can enjoy them and also make sure they're not burdening tenants.
Awesome. Looks like there's another question in the chat for you, Greg. Was there anything you learned in your research that was particularly surprising to you?
I would say what surprised me was just how different it seemed Alameda's own policies were from other places. Instead of saying it must cost this amount, most others where they had many categories and saying these are all acceptable and these are how long you should have tenants pay it over, whether it's 5, 10, 20 years. So, and on top of that, I think there were better like listed protections of how they can't circumvent it, like having one like painting and then saying, okay, we're going to increase rates, and then do another coat next year, another coat of paint on it. And now we'll get another rate increase because it's a new improvement, and other cities have more in-depth protections. So I just noticed ours seemed very general, and there was a lot of things we could have used to specify what can and can't be done.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Greg, and congratulations again on this year of service. And yeah, with that, we're all wrapped up. That's this session of the Capstone Poster Symposium. One giant congratulations for sure to everyone who presented today, all the fellows who have done such amazing work throughout the year. And yeah, thanks to the audience as well for your participation, great questions and just involvement in the chat and everything. So yeah, that will conclude today's Poster Symposium session. Please continue to support our fellows by reaching out to them on LinkedIn or by email. And all our fellows' information is available on our website, which I'm going to actually throw in the chat here if you want to connect with them personally and ask them further questions about their work or whatever it might be. You can check it out there. And then also, we have additional poster sessions coming up this week. Please visit our website for the full schedule of activities and registration links for the Poster Symposium and our graduation celebration on August 11th. And you can check that out here at this link. Awesome. So recordings of these sessions will be available on our website and within a follow-up email sent to all attendees during the last week of July. I should say also tomorrow will be more affordable housing, folks. Basically the second half of affordable housing will be going tomorrow. So another amazing 8 fellows sharing about their projects having to do with housing work.